The notification lit up my phone at 3:12 a.m. Victoria's message was short and sharp. "You'll regret this, Dorian. I promise." I sat on the hotel bed, staring at those words. My hands weren't shaking. My heart wasn't racing. For the first time in 14 years, I felt completely calm. The suitcase beside me held everything that mattered: documents, laptop, passport, and a flash drive containing 3 years of carefully gathered evidence. She thought I was running scared. She thought I'd come crawling back within a week, begging for forgiveness, promising to be better. That's what I'd always done before. But this time was different. This time, I had prepared. I didn't reply to her message. Silence was more powerful than any words I could type. Instead, I opened my laptop and reviewed the files one more time. Bank statements showing her hidden accounts. Screenshots of messages she thought I'd never see. Photos of receipts from places she claimed she'd never been. Everything was backed up in 3 separate locations. Everything was organized, dated, and ready for what came next. I closed the laptop and lay back on the bed, finally allowing myself to smile. 6 months ago, I had discovered the first clue completely by accident. Victoria had left her email open on our home computer, and a notification popped up, a confirmation for a hotel reservation I knew nothing about. My stomach had dropped. But instead of confronting her, I made a different choice. I started watching, listening, and documenting everything. I opened a separate bank account she didn't know existed. I scanned every important document and uploaded them to a secure cloud storage. Every time she lied, I recorded the date and details in a private journal. Every unexplained expense went into a spreadsheet. I became a detective in my own marriage, collecting proof of the betrayal I'd suspected for years but never wanted to admit. The hardest part wasn't gathering evidence, it was pretending everything was normal. Smiling at breakfast. Kissing her goodbye before work. Acting like I didn't know she was destroying our marriage from the inside. But patience paid off. By the time I decided to leave, I had everything I needed to protect myself legally and financially. I remember the exact moment I decided enough was enough. We were having dinner at her favorite restaurant, and she was laughing at something on her phone. When I asked what was funny, she snapped at me to mind my own business. The old me would have apologized. The old me would have shrunk back and changed the subject. But something shifted that night. I looked at her across the table, really looked at her, and realized I didn't recognize the person I'd married. That night, I started making my exit plan. I researched divorce lawyers in 3 different cities. I calculated exactly how much money I needed to start over. I made a list of everything I owned before our marriage and everything I'd contributed since. I gave myself a timeline, 6 months to prepare everything perfectly. No rushing. No emotional decisions. Just careful, methodical planning. Victoria had no idea what was coming. She thought I was weak, predictable, controllable. She had spent years training me to accept less, to question myself, to believe I was lucky she stayed. She was wrong about all of it. The morning I left, Victoria was still asleep. I had packed my bags the night before and hidden them in the car. I moved through our apartment like a ghost, taking one last look at the life I was leaving behind. I didn't feel sad. I felt relieved. Every item I left behind was just stuff, replaceable, meaningless. What I took with me was freedom, documentation, and a plan that had been months in the making. I left a single note on the kitchen counter: "I'm gone. My lawyer will contact you." No explanations. No apologies. No room for manipulation or guilt trips. Driving away from our building, I checked the rear-view mirror once. The apartment windows were dark. She wouldn't discover I was gone for at least another 2 hours. By then, I'd be at my lawyer's office, filing the paperwork that would protect everything I'd worked for. By then, the bank accounts I'd quietly separated would be secured. By then, it would be too late for her to intercept my plans. I turned on the radio and drove toward my new life. Cameron, my lawyer, was already waiting when I arrived at his office. I'd hired him 3 months ago, paying cash for our consultations so Victoria wouldn't see the charges on our credit card statements. "You've done impressive work, Dorian," he said, flipping through the folder of evidence I'd compiled. "Most people come to me with emotions and accusations. You've come with documentation and facts." We spent 3 hours going through everything: the timeline of her deceptions, the financial evidence, the proof of her hidden assets. Cameron explained that because I'd prepared so thoroughly, I had legal advantages Victoria wouldn't expect. "She's going to try to make you look like the bad guy," Cameron warned. "She'll tell everyone you abandoned her without warning. She'll play the victim." I nodded. I'd already anticipated that. That's why I'd kept screenshots of her messages, recordings of arguments where she admitted to lying, and witness statements from friends who'd seen her behavior. "Let her try," I said quietly. "I have the truth on my side now." Cameron smiled. "Then let's make this official." He handed me papers to sign, and with each signature, I felt lighter. By noon, Victoria had called 17 times. I let every call go to voicemail. Finally, she left a message, her voice shifting from angry to confused to desperate. "Dorian, where are you? What's going on? This isn't funny. Call me back right now." I saved the message but didn't respond. I was following Cameron's advice exactly. No contact except through legal channels. Every interaction would be documented and controlled. My phone buzzed with texts. Friends asking if I was okay. Her sister demanding I call Victoria immediately. Her mother threatening me with lawyers of her own. I blocked the numbers one by one. This wasn't cruelty, it was self-preservation. For years, Victoria had used other people to pressure me, to make me feel guilty, to force me back in line. Not anymore. I'd built walls they couldn't climb, boundaries they couldn't cross. I checked into a different hotel under a name Victoria didn't know I used. I paid cash. I kept my location private. Every step was calculated to maintain control of the situation. That evening, I ordered room service and ate in peaceful silence. No criticism. No tension. Just me. The next morning, Cameron called with news. "She's already hired a lawyer. They're threatening to freeze all joint accounts and claim you're hiding assets." I almost laughed. "Tell them to go ahead and check. Every withdrawal I made was legitimate and documented. Every account I opened is in my name with my pre-marriage funds." This was the moment I'd been preparing for. While Victoria had been secretly moving money, I'd been doing the opposite, protecting what was rightfully mine and documenting every dollar. Cameron sounded impressed. "She's also claiming you left without warning, that you're being unreasonable and refusing to communicate." "Show them the messages," I said calmly. "The ones where she threatened me. The ones where she admitted to lying. Let them see who was really unreasonable." We talked strategy for an hour. Every move Victoria made, we had a counter-move ready. Every accusation she threw, we had evidence to refute it. For years, she'd controlled the narrative in our relationship. She'd made me doubt my own memory and question my own perceptions. But documentation doesn't lie. Numbers don't manipulate. Evidence doesn't gaslight. I hung up feeling confident. The game had shifted, and this time, I was holding all the cards. I spent that afternoon walking through the city, really seeing it for the first time in years. Without Victoria's constant criticism echoing in my head, everything looked different. Brighter. Fuller of possibility. I stopped at a coffee shop I'd always wanted to try but never could because Victoria hated coffee shops. I ordered exactly what I wanted without worrying if it was too expensive or too indulgent. Sitting by the window, I watched people pass by, each living their own complicated lives. For so long, I'd felt trapped, suffocated by a relationship that drained more than it gave. Now I was free. Actually free. Not just physically separated, but mentally and emotionally liberated from the constant manipulation and control. My phone buzzed. Blake, my oldest friend, had finally gotten through my silence. "Heard you left. You okay?" Blake was one of the few people who'd seen through Victoria's charm. He'd tried to warn me years ago, but I hadn't been ready to listen. "I'm better than okay," I texted back. "I'm free." "About time," he replied. "Need anything?" "Just friendship. The kind that doesn't come with conditions." "You got it." That evening, Blake met me for dinner. He listened as I explained everything, the months of planning, the evidence I'd collected, the legal strategy Cameron had developed. "I'm proud of you, Dorian," Blake said simply. "It takes guts to walk away, especially when you know there'll be a fight. I told him about the worst moments in my marriage. The times Victoria had made me feel worthless. The constant criticism disguised as helping me improve. The way she'd isolated me from friends and family, making me dependent on her approval. Blake nodded, recognizing patterns he'd seen from the outside. She's a narcissist. Classic case. Everything you're describing, the manipulation, the gaslighting, the control, it's textbook. Hearing someone validate my experience felt like releasing pressure I didn't know I was holding. For years, Victoria had convinced me I was the problem. That I was too sensitive, too emotional, too difficult to please. You saved yourself, Blake continued. Most people in toxic relationships don't get out. They stay, hoping things will change. I raised my glass. To getting out. To freedom, Blake echoed. We clinked glasses, and I felt truly seen for the first time in years. Cameron called the next morning with an update. Victoria's lawyer had made their first official demand. She wanted the apartment, half of all assets, and spousal support. Expected, Cameron said. Now here's what we do. We filed our counter-response within hours. I wasn't asking for spousal support, but I was claiming my fair share of assets I'd contributed to. More importantly, I was requesting full disclosure of all her hidden accounts and income sources I'd discovered. The evidence I'd gathered showed Victoria had been hiding money for years. She had accounts I wasn't supposed to know about. She'd been receiving income she'd never reported to me. This changes everything, Cameron explained. Her lawyer is going to realize she's not dealing with someone who's unprepared. By afternoon, we received a response. Suddenly, Victoria wanted to negotiate. The aggressive demands softened. The threats disappeared. Cameron smiled. She's scared. She knows you have proof of financial misconduct. I felt a surge of satisfaction. Not from revenge, but from justice. For years, she'd played games with our finances, hiding money while demanding I account for every dollar I spent. Now the truth was coming out, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. The following week was a chess match. Every move Victoria's lawyer made, Cameron countered with evidence. Every accusation she threw, we refuted with documentation. She claimed I'd abandoned her financially. We showed proof I'd paid more than my share of expenses for years. She claimed I'd hidden assets. We proved she was the one with secret accounts. Her lawyer started pushing for mediation. They want to settle, Cameron told me. They know if this goes to court, Victoria's going to look very bad. Part of me wanted to fight just to expose everything publicly. But Cameron advised differently. You've already won. Take the settlement, get your freedom, and move forward. He was right. This wasn't about punishing Victoria. It was about reclaiming my life. We entered mediation with clear demands. I wanted my portion of joint assets, my personal belongings, and complete separation. I didn't want her money, her family, or her drama. Victoria sat across the table from me, looking smaller than I remembered. Her lawyer did most of the talking while she stared at me, probably trying to intimidate me like she used to. It didn't work. I met her gaze steadily, calmly, letting her see I was no longer the person she could control. During a break in mediation, Victoria cornered me in the hallway. It was the first time we'd been alone since I'd left. "Why are you doing this, Dorian?" she asked, her voice cracking. "I thought we could work things out." I looked at her carefully, seeing the manipulation even in her pain. "You had years to work things out. You chose lies instead." "I made mistakes," she said, tears forming. "But we all make mistakes. Don't you still love me?" The old me would have crumbled at those tears. The old me would have felt guilty and considered going back. But I'd learned something important. Love without respect isn't love at all. "I love myself more," I replied simply. "And that means not accepting less than I deserve." She switched tactics instantly, anger replacing tears. "You'll never find someone like me." "That's exactly what I'm hoping for," I said, walking back toward the mediation room. Behind me, I heard her gasp. The truth had cut through all her defenses because it was something she never expected, me choosing myself over her. Cameron was waiting inside, and we continued negotiations with renewed focus. The settlement was finalized 3 days later. I walked out of the lawyer's office with my freedom, a fair division of assets, and complete legal separation from Victoria. I stood on the street, breathing in cool evening air, feeling the weight of 14 years lift from my shoulders. No more walking on eggshells. No more second-guessing myself. No more living for someone else's approval. Blake met me for a celebratory dinner. "How does it feel?" he asked. "Like I can finally breathe," I admitted. "Like I've been underwater for years and finally broke the surface." We talked about the future, my plans, my dreams, the life I wanted to build. For the first time in over a decade, I was thinking about what I wanted, not what Victoria demanded. "You're going to be okay," Blake said confidently. "Better than okay. You're going to thrive." I believed him. Because I wasn't just leaving a bad marriage, I was stepping into a version of myself I'd forgotten existed. The man who had hobbies and interests, who had opinions and boundaries, who deserved respect and kindness. That night, I slept without nightmares for the first time in years. Moving into my own apartment felt surreal. Every piece of furniture I chose, every color I painted, every decision was mine alone. No criticism. No suggestions that were really demands. I set up a home office in the second bedroom. I bought the leather chair I'd always wanted. I hung photos of places I'd traveled before Victoria, reminding myself of the person I used to be. Blake helped me move in, joking about my terrible taste in curtains but supporting every choice I made. It felt good to have a friend who accepted me without conditions. "This place is so you, Dorian," Blake observed. "The other apartment always felt like it belonged to Victoria. This is actually yours." He was right. 4 years, I'd lived in spaces that reflected Victoria's preferences, Victoria's style, Victoria's personality. I'd become invisible in my own home. Not anymore. Every corner of this apartment showed who I was. Books I loved, music I enjoyed, art that spoke to me. I ordered pizza for dinner, another thing Victoria had never allowed. We ate straight from the box, laughing about nothing important, just enjoying simple friendship. For the first time in years, I felt at home. A month after the separation, Victoria tried to contact me directly. She'd gotten my new number somehow and sent a long message about wanting to talk, to explain, to fix things. I read it once and deleted it. There was nothing left to say. Every explanation she offered now was too late, every apology empty after years of manipulation. Cameron had warned me this might happen. Some manipulators can't accept losing control. They'll try new tactics, guilt, promises, even threats. Don't engage. I blocked her number and changed it again, making sure this time only trusted people had access. Boundaries weren't mean, they were necessary. Work became easier without the constant stress of going home to criticism. My boss noticed the change. "You seem different lately, Dorian." Happier. I was happier. The anxiety that had plagued me for years was fading. The tension I'd carried in my shoulders was releasing. I was sleeping better, eating better, living better. Victoria had once told me I'd never survive without her. She'd made me believe I needed her guidance and control. She was wrong. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. And every day proved I'd made the right choice. I started therapy 3 months after leaving. Not because I was broken, but because I wanted to understand how I'd allowed myself to stay in toxicity for so long. The therapist, Dr. Patterson, helped me recognize patterns I'd missed. "Manipulation is gradual," she explained. "It starts small, a comment here, a criticism there. Over time, you normalize behavior that should never be normal." We worked through my relationship history, identifying red flags I'd ignored. Victoria's charm at the beginning. The way she'd isolated me from friends. The constant criticism disguised as care. "You're not weak for staying, Dorian," Dr. Patterson assured me. "You're strong for leaving." Those words hit differently. For so long, I'd felt shame for not leaving sooner. But leaving takes courage, planning, and strength most people don't understand. I learned about narcissistic abuse, gaslighting techniques, and trauma bonding. I learned why I'd kept going back despite the pain. Understanding the psychology helped me forgive myself. The most important relationship is with yourself, Dr. Patterson said in one session. Everything else flows from that. I wrote that down and put it on my bathroom mirror. Every morning, I reminded myself that my self-worth wasn't dependent on Victoria's approval anymore. 6 months after leaving, I ran into Victoria unexpectedly at a grocery store. My heart jumped initially, but then I realized something important. I wasn't afraid anymore. She looked different. Tired, maybe. Smaller somehow. She saw me and froze, clearly debating whether to approach. I nodded politely and kept walking. No anger. No need to prove anything. Just a simple acknowledgement that we'd once known each other and now we didn't. She didn't follow me. Maybe she sensed the change in me, the confidence that comes from choosing yourself. Maybe she realized the person she'd controlled no longer existed. At the checkout line, I caught a glimpse of her leaving the store quickly. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no regret, no lingering emotion. Just peace. The kind of peace that comes from complete closure. Blake asked me later if I was okay. Perfectly fine, I told him honestly. She's just someone I used to know now. And that was the truth. The power she'd held over me for 14 years had completely evaporated. She was just another person in the world, no more significant than a stranger. I started dating again, though cautiously. The therapist had helped me identify healthy relationship patterns, and I approached new connections with clearer boundaries. I met someone, Alex, through friends. We took things slowly, building friendship first. Alex was patient, kind, and respected my need for space and healing. I'm not looking for anything serious yet, I explained early on. That's fine, Dorian, Alex replied. We can just enjoy getting to know each other. That simple respect meant everything. No pressure. No manipulation. No trying to rush me into something before I was ready. We went to coffee shops, walked through parks, talked about life and dreams and past mistakes. Alex listened without judgment when I explained why I was cautious. You deserve someone who treats you well, Alex said simply. Take all the time you need to trust again. Being around someone emotionally healthy showed me how abnormal my marriage had been. Real care doesn't demand sacrifice. Real love doesn't require losing yourself. I wasn't sure where things would go with Alex, but for the first time in years, I was open to possibility without fear. A year after leaving Victoria, Blake and I went on a road trip. Just two friends, exploring new cities, trying new foods, having adventures without schedules or expectations. We talked about everything and nothing. Blake shared his own relationship struggles, and I offered support the way he'd supported me. You've changed, Dorian, Blake observed one evening. You're more yourself now. More confident. I thought about that. He was right. Somewhere along the journey of leaving, healing, and rebuilding, I'd rediscovered who I was beneath all the manipulation and control. The quiet confidence that came from surviving something difficult. The wisdom earned from learning hard lessons. The peace that followed choosing self-respect over comfort. I had to lose everything to find myself, I admitted. It sounds cliché, but it's true. Blake smiled. Some people never find themselves. They just keep living other people's versions of who they should be. I looked out at the landscape passing by. Mountains, valleys, open roads stretching toward horizons I couldn't see yet. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of the unknown. I was excited by it. Victoria reached out one more time through her lawyer. She wanted to clear the air and end things on good terms. Cameron advised me to decline unless there were legal matters to discuss. There weren't. She just wanted one last conversation, one last chance to control the narrative. Tell her no thank you, I said calmly. Everything that needed to be said has been said. Cameron handled it professionally, and that was the last I heard from her. I realized she'd probably expected me to crumble. To come back begging. To prove she was right about me being unable to survive without her. Instead, I'd thrived. I'd built a new life, formed healthy friendships, started healing from years of trauma. My success wasn't about proving her wrong, it was about proving myself right. I was worth more than I'd been accepting. I deserved kindness, respect, and genuine love. The best revenge wasn't anger or bitterness. It was living well. It was being happy. It was refusing to let her actions define my future. I closed that chapter completely, finally ready to move forward without looking back. I changed careers, something I'd wanted to do for years but Victoria had discouraged. She'd convinced me I wasn't capable of more, that I should be grateful for what I had. But I'd always been capable. I'd just been convinced otherwise. I enrolled in courses, networking events, and slowly transitioned into work I actually enjoyed. The fear of failure Victoria had instilled in me faded as I succeeded step by step. My new colleagues didn't know my history. They just knew me as I was now, confident, capable, friendly. I got promotions based on merit, not manipulation. One afternoon, my manager pulled me aside. "Dorian, you've got real potential here. Keep up the excellent work." Those simple words of genuine encouragement meant more than 1,000 empty compliments from Victoria ever had. I was building a life based on my own choices, my own efforts, my own dreams. Every achievement was mine. Every success was earned. Victoria had tried to make me small to keep me controlled. But I wasn't small. I never had been. I was exactly as capable and worthy as I'd always been underneath her influence. 2 years after leaving, I attended a friend's wedding. Love surrounded me, real, healthy, supportive love. The kind where both people lifted each other up instead of tearing each other down. I watched the couple exchange vows about respect, partnership, and mutual support. I watched them look at each other with genuine affection, not manipulation or control. And I realized I'd never had that with Victoria. What I'd called love was actually dependency, trauma bonding, and fear masquerading as commitment. Real love looked completely different. It looked like the couple in front of me, celebrating each other's successes and supporting each other through challenges. At the reception, Alex and I danced slowly, comfortable in the silence between us. We'd been dating for 8 months now, taking things at a pace that felt right for both of us. "Happy?" Alex asked softly. "Very," I replied honestly. Because I was happy. Not the temporary happiness that comes from avoiding conflict, but deep contentment that comes from being genuinely valued and respected. I'd thought leaving Victoria would be the end of love for me. Instead, it was the beginning of understanding what love actually meant. I wrote Victoria a letter I never sent. Not for her, but for me. A way to process everything and put it all into words. I wrote about the pain, the confusion, the years I'd lost to manipulation. I wrote about discovering my own strength and learning to trust myself again. I wrote about forgiveness, not for her, but for me carrying the weight of anger. Then I burned the letter, watching the pages curl and blacken, symbolically releasing all the hold she still had on my thoughts. Dr. Patterson had suggested this exercise. Sometimes we need to express things that don't need to be shared. The act of writing can be healing even without sending it. She was right. Watching that letter burn felt like releasing the last chains Victoria had on my mind. I didn't need her to understand or acknowledge anything. I only needed to free myself from needing her validation. I scattered the ashes in a river, watching them dissolve and disappear. Just like my old life. Just like the person I used to be. What remained was stronger, wiser, and finally whole. 3 years after leaving, I barely thought about Victoria anymore. She'd become just a chapter in my story, not the whole book. I had new friends, a career I loved, a relationship that was healthy and reciprocal. I had hobbies Victoria had always criticized. I traveled to places she'd always said weren't worth visiting. Every choice I made was mine. Every day was lived on my terms. The person I'd become was someone I actually liked and respected. Blake threw me a freedom anniversary party, celebrating the day I'd walked away. Friends gathered, people who knew my story and supported my journey. "You inspire me, Dorian," one friend said. "You showed that it's never too late to choose yourself." Those words meant everything. Not because I wanted to be inspirational, but because I'd proven to myself that courage exists even when you're terrified. Leaving Victoria hadn't been easy. Healing hadn't been quick. Building a new life had taken effort and patience. But it was worth every difficult moment. Every tear, every doubt, every setback had led me here, to a life that was truly mine. I stood on my balcony one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. My phone sat silent beside me, no threatening messages or manipulative calls. Just peace. Just freedom. Just me, exactly as I was meant to be. Victoria had said I'd regret leaving. She'd been certain I'd come crawling back, unable to survive without her control and manipulation. But she'd been wrong about everything. I didn't regret leaving. I regretted not leaving sooner. I regretted the years I'd wasted believing her lies about my worth. What I left with was more valuable than any possession or property. I left with my self-respect, my autonomy, and my future. I left with the understanding that I deserved kindness, respect, and genuine love. I left with boundaries that protected my peace. I left with wisdom earned through pain and transformed into strength. She thought leaving was my weakness. She didn't expect it was actually my greatest act of courage. I smiled, raising my glass to the sunset, to freedom, to the journey that had brought me here. Here's to leaving, I whispered to myself. And here's to everything I found on the other side. The sky darkened, stars appeared, and I stood there in comfortable silence, finally, completely free.